It's another edition of Musical Shenanigans. And here it is, the 11th installment, and not one reference to the armadillos we stuff into our trousers. But stick around for a smorgasbord of fun, mayhem, and Kanye. 11th floor, plumbing accessories, men's pants. Watch your step. And now, here's Dave, Cory, and Scott. All right, welcome back. This is Cory.
And this is Dave.
This is Scott. Praise Satan.
Praise Satan.
Oh!
All right, we're back pitting albums against each other again.
Indeed.
And this week, in round one, we have Blondie's Parallel Lines up against Fiona Apple's Win the Pawn. In round two, we have Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers' Damn the Torpedoes up against Creedence Clearwater Revival, Willy, and the Poor Boys. Do we have anything from the last show to cover?
Oh, no, we don't have anything from the last show to cover, but I actually was going to mention this, Cory. You made me aware of this. We are always, humbled and honored that anybody, wants to listen to us run our mouths about this stuff, so thank you so much for listening. But interestingly enough, Cory has access to data that shows us where our listeners are located. And we spotted some fascinating stuff since the last time we talked to you guys. We have a lot of listeners in the United States. We just want to thank you no matter where you are. If you're in the US, fantastic. If you're somewhere else, that's also fantastic. Thank you for listening. We do appreciate all you guys. Thanks.
Just remember, Satan loves you no matter where you are.
And go ahead and tweet in and just say where you're from. I know I'm pandering to get a tweet.
Yes, please do.
You're just you're begging for the tweets. Yeah.
Please tweet us.
Yes, thank you very much. It is humbling.
It really is. Just getting the amount of hits we're getting is humbling enough.
Yep.
So thank everybody. Thank you all for indulging us.
It is crazy because we get on here and just talk shit. So
okay, so let's get ourselves into round one, shall we? This is with Blondie Parallel Lines and Fiona Apple. Scott will be deliberating. And Dave will be going first with Fiona. Oh,
yeah,
wait.
but Blondie was all about cocaine, right? I mean, Parallel Lines. What else? Anyway, no, Dave, what is this Fiona tragedy thing?
There. So, Cory kind of alluded to this earlier. Most people refer to this album as Win the Pawn for short, but this is actually the full name. When the pawn hits the conflicts, he thinks like a king. What he knows throws the blows when he goes to the fight, and he'll win the whole thing for he enters the ring. There's no body to batter when your mind is your might. So when you go solo, you hold your own hand and remember that depth is the greatest of heights. And if you know where you stand, then you know where to land. And if you fall, it won't matter because you'll know that you're right. That actually set a record for longest album name at the time, and a lot of people kind of made jokes about it and said, Jesus Christ, how pretentious is this girl? But there's a little bit more to this story. Fiona Apple's first album, called Title, had come out about 3 years earlier. The big single from that album was a song called Criminal, and the video got a lot of attention. She was about 19 years old at the time, and the video was basically just her wandering around in her underwear in a house full of passed out people who kind of look like they're sleeping off a 3-day orgy. And judging from all that, people kind of concluded, oh, this Fiona Apple, she's sort of this sexually confident, edgy girl, maybe with a little bit of streak of crazy to her, right? The problem is that wasn't really accurate. This is who Fiona Apple really was. She was raped at the age of 12. And afterwards, she started having panic attacks every time she was walking home from school. She also developed an eating disorder because in her mind, she believed that if she could just get skinny enough, then maybe the next predator just wouldn't be interested in her. And she talked about this whole experience and all the work that it took to kind of come back from it very openly until we got to a profile from Spin magazine. Now, the author of Spin, this Spin piece didn't really accuse her of lying per se, but he did sort of suggest that maybe she was playing up the trauma because she thought it would help her career. And that was shitty enough, but what was worse were the letters to editors, the editor that showed up in the next issue. Here's a quick sample. I'm so tired of drama queens parading their woes under the public spotlight as if victimhood was a trendy fashion statement. That was one of the kinder ones. Well, she broke down. It took her a while to kind of rebuild from that, come back. And when she did kind of get over it a little bit, she sat down and she wrote herself a poem as sort of a pep talk to herself. And now I'm going to read it again. When the pawn hits the conflicts, he thinks like a king. What he knows throws the blows when he goes to the fight. And he'll win the whole thing before he enters the ring. There's no body to batter when your mind is your might. So when you go solo, you hold your own hand. And remember that depth is the greatest of heights. And if you know where you stand, then you know where to land. And if you fall, it won't matter because you'll know you're right. And now all of a sudden, sudden those words seem a little less pretentious. In fact, this is what this whole album says. You know what? Fuck you. If you don't get me, that's your problem, not mine. I know what I've been through. I know who I am. You don't have the slightest fucking idea. So from this point forward, I'm going to be doing this my way, whether you like it or not. And that's really the message of this entire album.
Fuck yeah.
All right.
You know, I gotta say, that album, I listened to it twice. I love Fiona Apple anyway, but reading up on that, I was like, ooh. And it was like, okay, well, that makes it a bit deeper. So, yeah, go her. And plus, I have mad respect for anybody who writes their own stuff.
Yeah, and she's a hell of a writer, too.
Yes,
she's somebody that wrote online that I was reading. They said she was a little like Tom Waits in that there's no real genre for her. She just sort of made her own genre and her own category.
She's one of those people that just kind of cut their own way through that jungle, and it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you get into this album, you know, I kind of talked about this a little bit in the intro, that really the whole message of this is fuck you, we're doing this my way. The very first track on the album is a song called On the Bound, and right in the first verse, there's a lyric that seems like it's a direct response to that spin piece. All my life is on me now. Hail the pages turning, which kind of feels like she's directly commenting on that.
She came out swinging.
Absolutely.
She took all that criticism, she just rolled it up and spit it right back out at him.
Well, that's what a good songwriter does, is you use that angst, you use the things people say, and you just throw it back in their faces. And one critique I have for that album is that the vocal performance seemed a little like repetitive. That's the only critique I have. But otherwise, I mean, the writing is solid as hell. So,
yeah.
You know, I got nothing bad to say there. Yeah, exactly.
We talked about this back when we talked about Springsteen and Dylan. I'm a sucker for a good lyric, and
yeah,
God, does she have a way with words sometimes.
She really does. Even her newer stuff does.
Yep.
Yes, Fetch the Hedge Clippers, I think was the last one. She grabbed the title from a line that Gillian Anderson said in a show.
Oh, really?
I'm sorry. Realize. Fetch the Bolt Cutters.
Yeah, well, I knew that. I thought you were making a joke, but...
All right, can I go now?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, yeah, by all means. Wait, you have something to say. That's right.
Blondie, Parallel Lines, was their third album. Iambic pentameter be my bit. 'Gainst Fiona Apple, I must now quit. Because the only thing more pretentious than my iambic is the title of Fiona's album, up until you know what the whole poem means. Thanks, Dave. Ruined that line.
Really yanked the wind out of your fucking sail, didn't I?
Yep. I had that written. I'm like, and he gives this whole opening. I'm like, yeah, I know that's what it was, but he explained it. Damn it. Parallel Lines being the third album. Until this album, they were thrown in with other CBGB punk acts. The Ramones, Television, Talking Heads, New York Dolls, Dictators, The Cramps, and Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers. At the time of release, some of their contemporaries accused them of selling out. Yes, admittedly, Heart of Glass certainly had a disco feel. Leading up to this album, Blondie had been touring the world, across US, Canada, Europe, Australia, all parts of Eastern Asia, to support their second album, Plastic Letters. I say this because their traveling exposed them to other music and other cultures. Saying they sold out is a little bit unfair, as they were maturing as both songwriters and musicians, but not entirely. If we listen to Mike Chapman, the producer, he pretty much said these musicians, except for the guitar player, sucked. At least in the studio. This was a group that would come in and they would play everything live. They would take like their best recording and they would go with that. But now they were working with someone that was like, no. We're going to do all of these tracks, and I'm going to find the best one, and he was going to get out the razors and cut up the tape and do it right. The takeaway is that he made them better. He harnessed and finessed their talents, especially with Debbie Harry. Chapman did not impede Debbie to express the start of more female power in music. She could be sexually suggestive, which was a norm for the men back then, but double standard, it was not really allowed for the women. So, direct influence from this album and Debbie Harry include Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, Lady Gaga, Shirley Manson of Garbage, Joan Jett, and even Michael Stipe. And from an article dated July 1st, 2021, from Happy Media website, with an article entitled Blondie, Parallel Lines, Why It Mattered, by Allegra Short. Cutting through New York's grungy underground New York wave and punk scenes, Parallel Lines was Blondie's ticket to superstardom. Parallel Lines lives on as a timeless reminder of what a pop record can be. Fun, catchy as hell, flirtatious, and ultimately fearless. In summation, as this album reaches its 43rd birthday in September, there are girls aspiring to be rock stars hearing Debbie Harry for the first time belt out these songs, as well as girls another 43 years from now. The songs, the feel, the experience of Parallel Lines will outlive the creators and the three of us. It is immortal and belongs in this auspicious list. And one additional footnote. Last night saw the new Disney release, Cruella. Highly recommend it. And one way or another was in that movie. Album might be 43 years old, but these songs are timeless.
Was the reference to the Disney movie, was that you watched it, or was that the person that wrote this article watched it?
No, I watched it. That was my footnote.
Got it.
No, it's really good.
I'm just mixing up some cheese sauce over here to pour over you. Because fuck, man, that was cheesy. I mean, good and cheesy. Really.
In a good way.
So, is that your thing?
That's my thing. Anybody else got to say anything about Blondie? Other than what I found impressive was the producer, Mike Chapman.
Yes.
You all probably read a lot of the same stuff. This guy's a badass.
Very much so.
I love that he flat out called the rest of the musicians kind of lame, and he liked the guitar player, but that was about it. And he liked Debbie.
Yeah, not just lame musically, like you guys don't really know how to play, but lame in terms of their work ethic. Like there was that one quote where he basically said, not only do you guys not know how to play, you're not willing to do the work to figure out how to play.
Right. And they had Robert Fripp come in on a track.
Yes.
Oh, that's right.
That's my boy. That. Robert Fripp is just one of my all-time heroes. Amazing player.
Yeah, Mike Chapman, one of his quotes, he goes, "We go into the studio, we go in and make hit records, and it just happens. We don't think about it. If you're going to be in the music business, you got to make hit records. If you can't make hit records, you should fuck off and go chop meat somewhere."
Wow.
And you know what? With that kind of attitude, I can see where he was like really shaping bands. This is a guy that helped produce My Sharona with the Knack after this.
Yeah.
They also pushed back hard, man, because he was putting them through their paces and trying to make them, better. And one of the stories I read was at one point, like one of the guys actually picked up a keyboard in the studio and threw it at him.
And what's funny about that is it's the bass player that threw the keyboard at him. It wasn't even his own instrument.
Like, fuck you, I'm going to throw the keyboard and shit at you.
Yeah.
That's just like a bass player.
Wow, we do have free range on that.
Sorry, Mel.
Nobody on this call to defend themselves.
Yeah, all you bass players out there, you fat boys in the back.
You can tweet us. And there's the plug.
I have a funny feeling there's at least one we'll be hearing from.
Yes.
Okay, so she's not a fat boy in the back exactly, but
no.
We know, you know what we mean. And if you don't, tell us, tweet us, by all means.
Yep.
I dare you.
So here's my short version of this album. Chapman did a fantastic job getting these guys to sound better than they ever had up to that point. Frankly, in my view, better than they ever did that from that point forward. Debbie Harry is a phenomenal singer. So it's not the music here. It's not the singing here. What burns me here, and this is kind of the flip side of what we were just talking about with Fiona Apple. Again, I'm a sucker for lyrics. God, there are a lot of dumb lyrics on this album.
Oh, yeah.
She was writing them last minute, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I'll say about the Blondie album is it's not a deep dive into someone's psyche here. It's pop music.
Yes.
And that's okay. And it's a great album. And, there are some fantastic songs on it. I love Heart of Glass. I love One Way or Another. I mean, come on. Who doesn't? We grew up on this shit.
There was one other. I mean, everybody knows One Way or Another. Everybody knows Heart of Glass. When I listened to this, I had not heard pretty much any of the rest of this album. There was one that jumped out at me. It was a track called Will Anything Happen? You can really hear the punk roots there. There's like the grinding guitars that are just chugging along. The vocals, the vocal kind of reminded me of polystyrene from X-Ray Specs, actually. It had punk fingerprints all over it. You get a glimpse of maybe what they were at CBGB before they got to this point.
So yeah, that was my thing. I'm like, oh God, I have to judge these two fucking albums. We got the Blondie Cocaine album / pop music album. Then we got the Fiona Apple and Win the Pawn and blah, 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 blah album. Because for me, that was a very tough choice between those two albums. And I tried to judge, okay, which was more innovative innovative, and it's like, they were both really innovative in their own way. That's the thing. And they come from such different time periods. So I'm going to have to go with Fiona Apple.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. In your face, Debbie Harry.
Yeah, exactly.
The Fiona Apple album, I thoroughly enjoyed more so than the Blondie album.
Yeah.
By far. My only
Yeah.
argument is that Blondie really did set or helped start a lot of other careers.
She really
and
did,
a lot
yes.
of other female singers along the way.
Blondie was definitely one of those bands that set the course for so many others.
Yeah, no question. But I mean, especially Corey, I think the point you're making is Debbie Harry then became sort of this like role model for girls to grow up and be rock stars, which was very, I mean, it's challenging today, but in the 70s, 80s, it was really hard to be a girl and break into the rock scene.
Yes.
And that's phenomenal. I'm not taking anything away from Debbie Harry.
Okay, so we go with Fiona and we end round 1 here. And once again, it's time for the Kanye Report. And this week we had the third listening party?
Yeah, we said I said last time we weren't going to force this bit if we didn't have anything to say, but God, we have a lot of Kanye news to cover this time.
Oh my God, he was all over the news this week.
Yes.
Kanye was everywhere.
He lit himself on fire. He
brought up Marilyn Manson and the baby.
He built like his house. Oh, it's the visual joke again. Brilliant.
Yes.
He built, what was it, his childhood house he built in the middle of Soldier Field? He built it up on like a hill. Was that so he could have like a basement to put Kim in?
I don't know what that was about.
Pass the lotion down in a basket to her or something.
Yo, it puts the lotion in the fucking basket, bitch.
Did it? Do you guys know? That? Was it just like the outer shell of his childhood, or did he actually recreate the interior as well?
I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe he had the same like furniture. Maybe he kicked his mom out of his house to get the furniture.
His mom's dead.
Did he dig her up and bring her to?
Maybe that's what was under the house.
Yes. It was.
Now, of course, I don't think the original house had the big cross at the top of the front of it.
So he rebuilt his childhood home in the middle of Soldier Field, which, by the way, folks, like that should be your first indicator. Kanye has too much goddamn money. Please stop giving him your money. So he rebuilt his childhood home, and then he put his giant cross on it. Like it
looked like a small church you'd see in like some like small town when you're driving on a back road or something.
Remember that November Rain video?
Yes.
When Slash is doing the solo in the little church, and he's in that little fucking church in the middle of nowhere. That's pretty much what it looked like. Yeah.
Can you just say God complex? I mean, let's think about the imagery here. It's his childhood home, and he has a big glowing cross floating over it.
Yep. And then he sets himself on fire. I don't know why that though. What was the symbolism there?
I don't know. All it would have taken was one special effects guy to like make a mistake
But yeah, he could have done the full Michael Jackson then. But why?
But he was running around like Richard Pryor, though.
All right, that's true. But why did he have Marilyn Manson? That's my real question.
You know what? I'm still yet to
that?
figure that out. It was like Manson, and who was the other guy?
DaBaby.
And there's some controversy going on with him.
Yeah, DaBaby made a bunch of really super homophobic remarks at a bunch of shows, and he's like very popular right now.
R. Kelly did have to decline his invitation. He had a minor conflict.
Ooh, yeah. R was a little busy.
Couldn't get Gary Glitter.
I guess not. Pete Townsend was busy.
Want to be starting something.
Somebody's going to send us a decent cease and desist eventually.
So he's got the childhood home with the cross on top, and then he's got Marilyn.
Marilyn.
And then he's got Marilyn Manson there, who built his whole image about basically satanic imagery and all this stuff. So it's
the beautiful people.
Yeah, right.
And yet they're hanging out on the front porch.
What was
like
that
it's
about?
Tuesday.
Yeah. Did they smoke a blunt?
I mean, why didn't you just recreate Friday at that point?
Yeah.
That would have been much more enjoyable.
It would have been.
Bye, Felicia.
Maybe they should have. Maybe they should have done "Summertime" from Porgy and Bess. I don't know. and Marilyn Manson's like, "Gee, man, I don't know."
Oh no, Scott, I like your suggestion. The Porgy and Bess. Just they do the first two tracks. First two tracks off Kanye's album are just Manson doing "Bess, You Is My Woman" now. Exactly.
And Kanye as Porgy. It's like, yes. I could see this. I could see this.
All right. And then finally, the other big news this week, which
well, wait, hang on before we move on. So we had the listening party, but what we did not mention is that after this long build up, the album is also officially out.
Oh,
yeah,
it was
it's
like
out?
It is officially out. I just found this out today. Wait, you guys, I thought we were going to talk about it. You guys didn't listen to it?
No, fuck no.
Because I
No,
listened to the
not
whole
yet.
thing. Jesus Christ, what are we doing here?
God, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Was
I didn't get the
supposed
memo.
to?
Damn it. All right. Well, yeah, it's out. So the album is out. The album is out,
So, okay,
and you can get it by buying Kanye's new music player, new MP3 player, right?
Yeah. Oh, right. That's right.
Yeah.
I read about that.
Yes. So
it's like, what? How expensive is that?
So
though?
so Kanye launched this music player called the Stem player. I don't know much about it, but it's apparently retails for $200, comes preloaded with the album Donda, or for an extra $50 you can get a model that will not play Kanye music at all.
Yeah, I think that might be worth the money.
Yeah, I think that's
But then-
it's a premium feature. It's worth the upgrade.
I think it's interesting that it plays the stems because it allows the listener to basically remix the album any way they want.
Oh,
You
that's
get
right.
Each stem. Yeah, that's what the point of the stems is you get the bass track and this track and this track and then whatever, and you can mix it however you like.
So wait, you can cut the vocals out completely?
Yeah, you could. You could cut Kanye out of it or completely. Yeah.
Oh my god.
So it'd
what
be
a great
like
idea.
Kanye karaoke.
it would be probably his best album yet.
Okay, I was going to make fun of
Okay.
it, but that's actually a great idea.
That's a selling point.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just saying maybe so you listen to this monstrosity. That makes what 6 albums you've listened to?
Yeah, I know.
That's a record.
I'm sorry.
I'm very sorry. Yeah, that's sad.
I'm
Yeah,
collecting.
but Scott, we're going to have to listen to it to talk about it on the next Kanye report.
God, really?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
All right, so now the final bit of news that we learned this week is that
Yes.
Kanye has formally petitioned a court to change his name.
Right.
You guys, so
what's up
everybody
with
knows.
that?
So he went through this phase for a while. He calls himself Ye or Ye or I don't know how you pronounce it exactly.
Well,
and then there was Yeezus. He
Yeezus.
named one album Yeezus, because of the rhyme with Jesus. But now apparently he has officially petitioned a court to change his name to, and I'm just going to say Y-E, because we don't actually know how to pronounce it. I don't know if it's Ye
Because his
or
name
Ye.
is Kanye, so it'd be Yay, but then
Well, that makes
he
sense,
makes
but it...
Yeezy,
Yay.
unless he's now Yazzie, which sounds like a caffeinated Pomeranian.
And that means that album was technically called Yeezus, which doesn't make any sense either.
Yeah, it
Jesus.
doesn't. It doesn't. Or it sounds like a weird sex thing.
So we don't exactly know how to pronounce it, but it does create this problem. So we just launched this Kanye report bit last time, and now apparently we have to come up with a new name. So if apparently he's changing his name, I don't know what we call this. Is this now the Ye report or the Ye report? We don't know. If you guys have if you guys have an idea, tell us. Get on Twitter, tell us. We are at @mshenanigan. We will happily take your suggestions. Yeah. So again, Ye report, Ye report. I don't know. You tell us, but we are at
please.
@m_shenanigan. We would love to hear from you.
And thank you for joining us on the Kanye report.
Praise Satan!
All right, and we're back and ready for round 2 with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Cuatro.
Dun, 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 dun. No Woolly Bully? All right.
Oh, okay.
This is with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Damn the Torpedoes, up against Creedence Clearwater Revival with Willy and the Poor Boys. And Dave will be residing over this one.
I will. Gentlemen, are you ready with your arguments?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We flipped the coin backstage, and Corey, I believe you were going to start.
Yes, Damn the Torpedoes, once again a third album, and now this one was recorded at Sound City in 1978 to 1979. But there's more to this story. The Battle of Mobile Bay, a naval confrontation during the Civil War in August of 1864. For the Confederacy, the only full admiral, Franklin Buchanan, helmed the CSS Tennessee, perhaps the most powerful ironclad. Buchanan had commanded warships in the Caribbean against pirates and forces to take an enemy fort in the Mexican War. For the Union, there was David Farragut. He joined the Navy at the age of 8. At 12, he was wounded and captured during the Battle of Valparaiso against the Brits, and he also fought pirates. in the Caribbean. Badasses, both of them. Mobile Bay was held by the Confederacy, with twin forts erected at the entrance to the bay. Fort Morgan, the larger of the two, was armed with heavy guns that were capable of sinking any wooden ship coming into the bay. There were also torpedoes, what we call mines, that left a very narrow channel for ships to enter and leave the bay under Fort Morgan's guns. Farragut went in with 2 columns. One of his lead ships drifted across the buoy marker and into one of these torpedoes. It sunk in less than 30 seconds. The second ship stalled behind the first, not knowing what to do, and was stopping. The Union attack was slowly collapsing. Farragut in the third ship was like, fuck this, and powered ahead. When the captain of the second ship, after being passed by Farragut, was waving him down going, hey, you got torpedoes up there, you're gonna run into those. He replied, damn the torpedoes, and plowed through. After some major naval motorboating around the bay, and with them trying to ram one another and bounce around like wrestlers coming off the ropes, Farragut had won the day, and Damn the Torpedoes has claimed immortality for well over 150 years. That is Damn the Torpedo.
Well, okay. I was expecting an iambic pentameter or something.
No.
All right.
Wasn't quite Gemini Lee.
He was motorboating someone. I like that.
Yeah, I knew I'd get you with motorboating.
That was, yeah. How could you not? You had me at motorboating. Hey.
All right. So, Scott, are you ready with your argument in support of Creedence?
Is that all you wanted to say about that album? You gave us a fucking history lesson. What the hell is that? About motorboating in the Deep South and stuff.
It was every bit as on point as your Portishead argument.
Hey, Gemini.
And your Hotel California argument.
Skinwalker or hooker, yes or no? I stand by that. All right, well, in my deep dive this week, gentlemen, I discovered once again that Willy and the Poor Boys was named by John Fogerty, he was the writer of this album. You see, he was sexually abused by a sandwich when he was younger. But our sources can neither confirm or deny this, so it's speculated that he was sexually abused by a sandwich, which is why he named the album Willy and the Poor Boys. The album is basically about Willy and his set of poor boys, it's a man with a secret collection of sandwiches that were also his sex toys. Each one, he had a different unique smell, and each one was used to assume some kind of a horrible sex toy. For instance, he had one for sandwich sex, hoagie humping, bun stupping, hero huffing, po' boy molesting, bread banging, sub sucking, club cramming, dagwood dogging, grinder gagging, Cuban coming, or just plain sandwich fucking. But basically, life had not been entirely kind to Willy, you see, according to John. For instance, being named Willy, it was just fate dealing him a shit hand. It's no wonder he turned to the world of sandwich sex. And so Willy had 12 of these different po' boys, and even today, he lives down in the swamps, and if you listen, you can hear his terrifying howl. His voice was crying for a bathroom. He was smiling like it was Thursday, and he wore yellow trousers. Yes, he called them trousers because he didn't know the Tahitian word for green. Willy retired in 2002 and spent the remainder of his days with his poor boy collection. No one knows why he smelled of potato salad and patchouli, but he would often comment on the fact that John Fogerty had hemorrhoids and liked fish. Make of that what you will. Now, it may also be noted that all the songs on the album describe sex with sandwiches. For instance, Down on the Corner. Gives it a whole new fucking meaning, doesn't it? And then it came it came out of the sky. Dude, really, I mean, and then Cotton Fields, yeah, that's just nasty. Poor Boy Shuffle, that's probably 5 or 6 of them you can get in line. And then there was Feelin' Blue, and of course the Fortunate Son, which is, everybody thought that was like a protest song that Fogerty wrote, but it's clearly not. It is about, having a sandwich, basically clogging his small intestine. And Don't Look Wow, Don't Look Now. That's the name. Don't Look Now, yeah, because Don't Look Now. Fuck. And then, of course, Midnight Special. That says it all right there. And then Side of the Road. Yeah, we know what happened on the side of the road. And Effigy, of course, as a wrap-up to this sandwich sex monstrosity that Fogerty brought us and birthed out like some kind of bastard fucking sickening anal birth. But there it is. So yeah, Willy and the Poor Boys.
Oh my fucking God.
Once again, have fun with that, Corey.
I don't even know where to begin editing this. I told about the Civil War reenactment of where the term "damn the torpedoes" was pulled from.
And I told you about what the damn album is about. Right there. It's all about sandwich sex.
Now, here's the thing about this album. It was their third full album to be released in 1969.
Yeah,
in
super
January,
impressive.
they released Bayou Country. In August, they released Green River. In mid-August, they played Woodstock. And then in November, they released this album.
Yeah.
Fogerty had taken control of the band and was pissing them off because he was making them work.
Yeah. He had this philosophy that if they were ever out of the charts, that was potentially the end of their careers. And so he felt like they always had to be cranking out music. It's nuts. To do 3 albums in 1 year is nuts. To do it while you're also touring nonstop is particularly nuts. One of the commentaries I had read said that pace was only ever matched by the Beatles. And for context, the Beatles had multiple songwriters. Fogerty was the one writing every single one of these songs by himself.
True.
Yeah, he was very prolific.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
Amazing.
I mean, he drew on those dark parts of himself about he had all that angst to work out, and he probably had part of a sub stuck in there still.
The good old Southern rock band from San Francisco. All right.
They don't call it SoCal for nothing, which it isn't.
And I think this was originally, the first idea here is this was supposed to be sort of like a quasi-concept album a la Sgt. Pepper's, where they would invent this fake street band, Willy and the Poor Boys, and the whole album was supposed to be about that, but they basically it wasn't coming together, and they gave up on the idea.
They did, because that's not what it ended up being about, and I told you what it is, and I mean, that's obvious. Wikipedia got it fucking wrong in that case, okay?
They actually, I'm going to keep trying to segue back, and
Thank you.
They actually ended up writing one of these songs while they were doing the photo shoot, right? So they kind of like to dress themselves up as this mythical street band, and they went out with jug band instruments literally on a corner in Oakland. And while they were out there, they started futzing around and improvising. And at one point, they played something they thought sounded good. And the first thing they did, as soon as the photo shoot was over, run back to the studio and record it. And that became the Poor Boy Shuffle was the track on that album that grew out of that. By the way, it's not very good. That's the problem here. That's the problem here.
Really about.
Yes. Yeah. It was. You know what? I do think that the shop they did that shoot in front of was a sandwich shop, now that I think about it. But.
See, John Fogerty, again, a victim of sandwich sex abuse.
Going over to Tom Petty now, I'm going to bring up the producer of this one, Jimmy Iovine.
Yes.
Right.
He, a recording engineer who had worked with Lennon, Springsteen on Born to Run, a couple of his albums, Meatloaf's Bat Outta Hell, U2's Rattle and Hum, and then became an executive producer on other albums. Stevie Nicks.
He worked with Stevie Nicks, yeah.
The Pretenders. But he was also the sound engineer for the Voyager Golden Records, for the albums that were put onto the Voyager space probe in 1977.
Cool.
That's fascinating. I had no idea.
I did not know that.
Past couple weeks, I've been looking at the definitions of songs. This week, I was like, you know what? The producers are much more interesting. Not much more interesting than looking up the genres. Don't get me wrong.
This week's show, I mean, that really is a big part of the story of this week's show, right? Because we had Chapman with Blondie and Iovine with this record.
Right.
In both cases, I don't know that either of those albums would have come off half as well without the producers behind them.
Right, because it was the first time both bands worked with their new producer.
Right.
And these producers really changed them. I go back to Stan Lynch, and there are articles online of how they got his drum sound for this album. They were like, oh yeah, we loosened the toms, we used this specific kind of mic. People have been asking, because when you think about it, Stan Lynch is one of those underrated drummers, because some of his drum lines are literally part of the song. As far as when you think of the songs, you think of the drum line. Yeah. American Girl.
Yes, that snare.
Even the little simple thing of Breakdown. And then with Don't Do Me Like That, with a lot of his fills, they're iconic. They're not overly complicated. They just they fit the song.
Question, were all of these albums third albums?
No.
No. Fiona Apple was her second album.
Fiona album was her second. The CCR was the third in that year, but it was the fourth album.
Oh, okay, right, okay. Just
but yeah,
curious.
both of mine were thirds with new producers.
So one distinction here is when Jimmy Iovine came in to work with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, is he didn't have this problem that Chapman had with Blondie. He didn't have to focus on the quality of the playing, so he got to focus exclusively on the quality of the recording, and he did that by just multiple takes over and over and over again. I think one of the quotes I read was Refugee. They did like 100 takes of that song in order to find the best one that they thought was.
The Damn the Torpedoes title did come from the Admiral Farragut quote, but during the making of this album, Tom Petty was with one record company. MCA bought them out, and he was not going to have any rights to his music or anything. And even when they were recording, he was going back and forth with the lawyers and told them, "The hell with you, I'm not going to do this." And at one point even declared bankruptcy so that he could get ownership. He actually went up against them and won. And in the end, they capitulated, and that he was able to just go forward. So at one point, he's like, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. We're doing this shit." So he fought hard. And another thing I learned of, and I didn't know this, MCA used to have something called superstar pricing. Their albums were either released at $8.98 or $9.98. And it was $9.98 if it was a superstar, and they felt they could get another $1 out of it. And they were going to do that for Petty, and he said, "No, you're not going to gouge my fans."
Wow.
So this album was released at $8.98.
There's another piece to that story, right? So they were going to charge $9.98, and he said, "No, you're not going to gouge my fans." And they basically came back to him and said, "Look, your contract gives you creative controls, but we make the business decisions, and that includes pricing." And he said, "Fine, then I'm going to use my creative control, and my next album's going to be titled $8.98.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have a bunch of pissed off customers yelling at clerks in record stores trying to explain why they're being charged $9.98 for a record that says $8.98 on the cover."
There you go.
And that's when they backed down. They're like, it's not worth the hassle.
Tom was well known for being kind of an asshole in the music scene. He was older than a lot of other musicians at the time that had already made it when they were younger, and he hadn't made it.
Yeah, he was 29 at the making of this album.
Yeah, so he considered himself an old man in the biz by that point, and he was pissed off, and rightly so. I mean, it's a fucking excellent album, so yeah.
Somebody online said, even if you're a super Tom Petty super fan, it's quite possible this is the only album you're familiar with. The thing I like about this record is it's not trying to be anything other than just they're trying to be a fantastic, basically bar band rock and roll singles act. It's not some big concept album. It's not some big, it's just, we're trying to make a great rock and roll record. And frankly, they succeeded.
They weren't going for any sound, any kind of genre. It was what they were doing.
Yeah.
Yep.
They were a little old band from Gainesville, now living in LA.
Yep.
All
so
right.
so then maybe let's pivot back real quick to like CCR and talk about some of the tracks on that album. Like Down on the Corner, that's that title track that's really where the concept of this Willy and the Poor Boys comes from. Yeah. And Fortunate Son, that's the other big song that everybody knows.
That's the other big one.
You know, when we were talking about Springsteen, we talked about Born in the USA and the fact that it's like really misunderstood. People think it's this like flag-waving patriotic song, and in reality it's a very critical about the way the US government has treated veterans. Fortunate Son is probably number 2 on the most misunderstood tracks because that first line, some folks are born to wave the flag, the red, white, and blue. A lot of people think it's another flag-waving, Go America kind of song, and it's absolutely not. It's the opposite. The whole song is basically this big takedown of politicians who go off and start wars, but it's never them who fight it. It's never their kids who fight it. It's always like the poor and middle class kids that go off to war and get killed. That's a pretty well-known thing by people who are sort of focused on this stuff. But I will tell you actually that I learned something I did not know. For John Fogerty, that was a really personal point. He wasn't just some like San Francisco hippie singing about how the war is bad. He actually got drafted in 1966 and spent a year on an army base, basically every day waking up and living in fear that he was going to get orders to ship off to Vietnam. And he lucked out and it never happened, but it was because of the terror that left in him that prompted him to then come back out and write this song.
All right. I think we've had enough. Dave, go ahead and...
Both classic albums, obviously, they both belong on the Rolling Stone list. I don't think anybody's really arguing with that. New, innovative stuff. And again, that Tom Petty album, they're just trying to do fun rock and roll. But they did fun rock and roll so polished and so well. It was something people really hadn't heard before. I think I got to go with Tom Petty here.
And to wrap up, Blondie was at number 146. And Fiona Apple was at number 108. So we are aligned.
Wow.
On that one.
We are.
Cool. Good.
Creedence Clearwater came in at 193, and Tom Petty came in at 231.
What?
So that was an upset.
Get the hell out.
I think we all agree that Creedence, this album should not have been as high as it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's an album entirely about sex with sandwiches deserves to be a little lower on that list.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
That's just how
Fair.
it happens.
Yeah.
Fair.
Well, they're the same fools that put 5 Kanye albums on that list, okay? So
Exactly. Our next contenders, Alicia Keys with The Diary of Alicia Keys against George Harrison, All Things Must Pass.
Ooh. That's apples and oranges.
Second round, Elliott Smith with the album Either Or against Dusty Springfield, Dusty in Memphis.
Dusty Springfield, huh? Interesting. Okay. Fuck George Harrison. I'm just sorry. He's dead. You can't talk about it. Fuck that. No, he was a wanker.
No, I didn't say that.
Those Beatles sucked, man. I'm just gonna say it. But whatever.
I guess did you have any baked goods, or did that just not go with a sandwich this week?
It just didn't fit. I mean,
hoagie roll.
It just couldn't get it in there. Yeah, I know. It's horrible. No sound effects, no baked goods. What's this world coming to?
Okay. That's fine. That's fine. All right. So we will see you next time. Please tweet us.
Please tweet us. It is at _shenanigan.
I think the email's a useless point. So I think people are more likely to tweet than email. And that's okay with us. Thank you all again, wherever you are in the world. We have greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yes, praise Satan.
Yeah, I'm not giving it back to you this time.
Okay, well, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah, and we will catch you
Be that way.
the next time.
We're much like Fiona Apple. Fuck it. You know what? Never mind. I was gonna make a point, but I realized I was about to throw back to a reference on a point that I never actually made when we were talking about the album. So it is not that important.
Okay.
This is the part where I am to say, come back next time. But stick around for some extra pandering. And please tweet.